Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video is how you can go ahead and use a formatter object and the format method to go ahead and write to and read from sequential files using Java. So we're going to create a program that processes 10,000 die rolls, the numbers 1 through 6 that are stored in a file. This will require two separate programs. The first program will output the die rolls to the file. We're going to use a formatter to create a file called DieRolls.txt. Each die roll should be written using method format. Then we're going to create a program to read the die rolls from DieRolls.txt. The die roll should be read from the file by using the scanner. You're going to use method nextInt to input one integer at a time from the file. The program should continue to read the die rolls until it reaches the end of the file. The result summing up the number of rolls for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 should then be outputted to the text file output.txt. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into JGrasp, and the first file we're going to look at is DieRollInput.java. So what we have here on lines 1 through 6, we have the various imports that we're going to be needing for this class. On line 8, we have our class name, DieRollInput. And then I've created a constant. The number of rolls, in this case, will be 10,000. So within our main method, the first thing I do is I instantiate a secure random object. That's what we're going to be using to go ahead and generate our random numbers between 1 and 6. And then on line 16 and 17, we're going to create the output stream. And we're creating it using try with resources, which will close its resources when the try block terminates or due to an exception. So that way we don't have to specifically call the .close method to close the file. The try with resources will close the file for us. So what we're doing here is we're using the formatter object to create our file called DieRolls.txt. And then on line 17, we instantiate an integer that'll hold our die roll. And then on lines 20 through 24, this is the loop that we're going to go through, where we're going to go through this loop, in this case 10,000 times, which is the value of our number of rolls constant. And on line 21, we're going to create a random number between 1 and 6 using our secure random class to generate that number. And then on line 23, that line is the line that actually writes the die roll using the format method to our die rolls files. So that is the important line in this program. We specify how we want the output formatted. It's going to be an integer value, and we're going to output each new die roll on a separate line. That's why we have the new line right there. And then what we're going to do after the loop completes, we'll go ahead and display a message to the user so that they know the die rolls have been saved. And then what we're going to do on lines 29 through 38 is we're going to catch the various exceptions that may occur when you're working with files. When you're working with files, that's one of the most error-prone processes, so you want to make sure and include code that will catch any exception that may occur. So the first one, a security exception, is when the user does not have permission to write data to the file. The exception file not found, that's when the file does not exist and a new file can't be created, or you have an error opening the file. Illegal format exception, that's where there's an error with the outputs format. And a formatter closed exception occurs if the formatter object is closed when you attempt to write to it. So that would happen if you would have the formatter object closed and then you would attempt to actually write to it. So those are the exceptions that could occur in this program. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and update this name just to go ahead and throw one of the exceptions. I'm just going to specify C:, which is just my C drive. what we should run into when I run this program is we should actually get an error message, or an exception should get thrown. So the exception that gets thrown is output file cannot be found. And basically what's happening there is we had a file not found exception. So what happens there is that the file does not exist, and we were not able to create a file by the name of C:. So that's one of the possibilities of an exception that may occur. So let me just go ahead and update this to DieRolls.txt, and we will go ahead and rerun the program. So I'll recompile and rerun it, and DieRolls have been saved. And since I did not specify a path, what it does is it saves the file to your current working directory in JGrasp. So I have my DieRolls.txt file. If I go ahead and click on that, I have a bunch of random numbers between 1 and 6. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I actually have 10,000 die rolls. So it looks like it wrote the 10,000 die rolls to the file. So the next thing we need to do is we need a program that'll go ahead and read that input, and what it'll do is it'll sum up the number of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and that is my DieRollOutput.java file. So again, on lines 1 through 7, we're going to go ahead and we're going to include all the imports for the objects we're going to be using. On line 11, we create an array with the size of 7. On line 13 and 14, we're going to create a formatter and a scanner object. The formatter will be used to write our output to the file, and the scanner object will be used to go ahead and read the die rolls from our file. So first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and use our scanner object, and we're going to go ahead and read from our die rolls file within our try catch block. And we're going to go ahead and name that scanner object die rolls. And then we're going to create a formatter to write our summary data. And so that'll be our formatter object, and we're going to write it to an output.txt file. Okay, so the next item is a writer format. So again, what we're doing is we're actually writing information to the file. We're writing 2 strings to the file, and that is our header for our output. It's going to be a die and the count. So that is the formatting our headers. So format header row in output file. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to iterate through our die rolls, and we're just going to go ahead and count our 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s. And whatever die roll it is, we're just going to update that counter object by 1. So again, we have our array up there. So if there's a 1 rolled, it'll update the counter object that we're keeping track of 1s by 1, and so on and so forth. So that will read the information from our DieRolls.txt file. And then what we need to do is we need to write our counts after we've read all the information. We need to go ahead and write that information to our file. So we're going to start with DieRoll equals to 1, and then we're going to go ahead and iterate through our array of die rolls. And what we're going to do is we're just going to specify our die roll, which is either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and the number of die rolls that occurs. And again, what we've done is we've gone ahead and created our formatting string where we're 12 places for each one of our integers, and then it'll be a new line for the next number of die rolls. So again, what we're doing in this is we're just iterating through our counts array, and we're specifying the die roll and the number of 1s through 6s that have been rolled, and we're saving that information to our formatter or our output.txt file. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and print a message out, and then again we have the various exceptions that could occur. Files cannot be opened, output files closed, opening file for writing, illegal format exception, no such element exception, and an illegal state exception. And then what we have next is we have a finally block. So basically this will get executed if a catch, if we drop into one of our catch, or if our try completes successfully. And what we're doing here is we're just closing our writer object that we opened up above, and we're closing our DieRolls.txt file. So we're closing both of the files. That's what we're doing in our final block. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and mess up some of this. So I'm just going to call it DieRoll.txt. If I go ahead and attempt to run this now, we should run into exceptions. Files cannot be opened. And then I will go ahead and update that. I shouldn't have updated it down there. So I'll go up and update it in my code. And instead, I'll mess up my formatter object, my output. I'll just put a C colon in there, and we'll see what happens here. Again, we throw an exception because we cannot open that file, so I'll just change it to output.txt, and then we will go ahead and rerun the program, and I'll run my main, and die roll totals have been saved. So if we go ahead and look at our output file, open that up, and what we have is we have our various die rolls and the number of 1s through 6s that have been rolled, 7, 9, 10, 20. It looks like it's counted all those. So at this time through, it looks like the number of 3s leads the pack in the number of 3s that were rolled out of 10,000 die rolls. So this is just an example of a program that you would use both a formatter object and the format method to write data to a file, and you're using the scanner object to read data from a sequential file in Java. So that's all I had for this video, so we will talk to you later.